Hello and welcome to today's film breakdown. We're going to be looking at Honor, our recently released action ninja short film. Quick bit of context to the film. It was shot back in late 2017, early 2018, and it kind of ended up in post-production hell. There was a lot of issues with getting various VFX related things sorted out. And I also moved house a lot and changed jobs a couple of times. And I never really got around to focusing my energy on finishing it until lockdown happened and I was able to kind of pick up a few new skills and get it done finally. There's a lot of things in the film that rely on practical effects and different kind of little camera tricks here and there. So I thought we'd just have a quick look and break it all down for you guys so you can maybe implement some of this stuff in your own projects, or if you're just curious to see how we did it. So yeah, let's jump right in. This first title sequence at the beginning actually didn't exist until right before I finished the edit. It was probably the day I uploaded it. Basically because I wasn't really happy with the ending of the film in the sense that it's quite abrupt and kind of comes out of nowhere, which if you've seen the film, you kind of know what I mean. And I thought this helped to tie in kind of what happened a little bit easier. This is their price. His price is mentioned at the end of the film. You know, it's all about being part of a clan, honouring a code. So I thought this little bit of text, whilst expository, which isn't always the best thing, tells you just enough to kind of make the end make a little bit more sense, at least in my head. So yeah, this was literally added at the very last second. Yeah, so we open now with this rather dramatic shot here of our protagonist cradling his wife in his arms. Protagonist played by Mike Carr and the wife played by Amy Telford. Both very talented actors. Mike usually more of a stunt guy, more of a fight choreographer. This was one of his more dramatic roles that he played. Might have been one of the first times, don't quote me on this, but I think it was one of the first times he cried on camera. So I think he did a fantastic job with it. We gave him plenty of sweat and water. You can kind of see his top's a bit soaked and he kind of dribbles out quite a bit of the water, but it all adds to the absolute wreck that he is in this moment. We wanted to open on a really kind of shocking, sort of powerful moment to kind of grab the audience. We were very keen on getting this shot in as soon as possible, and it was one that we kind of come up with quite early in the pre-production process. A lot went into kind of making this right. This and the CCTV picture, actually what happens within the CCTV shot, was all done in one night. So we had a lot of time just to focus on basically two long shots. This was shot, I believe, using a dolly. I'm not sure if we switched to a glide cam at a certain point to get the shot, but we definitely set up a dolly through a set of French windows and just sort of slowly pushed in as the kind of music swells, as the emotion and the tension kind of rises within the scene. Music done by Nigel Lowe, the very talented composer. A lot of effects as well in this shot in terms of practical effects from Andrew Glazebrook, who is really good at making really cool practical effects out of almost nothing, seemingly. He had these kind of this sort of rubberized material that was see-through. It's basically fake glass that we scattered across the floor, which you see being sort of thrown in as the windows smashed in the CCTV shot later, which was, if you stepped on it, it just turned to powder. It was really weird stuff, but really cool to use. I'd never used that before. And then obviously the mix of latex and fake blood effects on Amy's throat there to make it look like her throat's cut. Obviously some edible stuff to go in her mouth. I believe she had some cotton balls in her mouth as well, to make it look like her face was swollen up from the fight that she'd been in before she died. But yeah, the nice lighting also by Krishna, the DP. He liked getting his pink gels in the shot where he could. You'll see that appear a couple of times. Street lamp coming through the back there, giving us that nice little bit of ambient light in the background on the oven through the window, and a bit of haze as well. Just Krishna really liked his haze, and I agree, it looks pretty good. It looks very cinematic, and we tried to use it where we could with using a smoke machine in some of the later scenes too, which you'll see. It just adds that nice kind of flair to some of the lights there. So Mike doing a real nice job here, just sort of building the emotion, going from despair to anger. That transition there, nice and smooth. I think he nailed that. Mike was just as big a part of the story in this as I was. So he wanted to make a ninja film. I wanted to make an action sort of revenge film. So this was kind of the amalgamation of it. Here we shot all of this in a kind of an outhouse, I guess you could say, that Mike has at his at his house. He's got a few sheds and a few buildings. He has like a dojo, which you'll see in a moment as well, and a couple of other buildings out there. So this was just shot in one of those. We blacked out the windows, just some material. You can kind of see it in the back right there, some of the sheeting that we used to hide the windows. Just meant to look like a kind of surveillance CCTV room of his house. We just basically set up a laptop, or maybe 2 laptops with some monitors attached via HDMI to make it look like there's a bunch of different screens. Obviously they're all showing the same camera angle in this particular moment. But yeah, the CCTV shots that you see on screen were actually there on set on screen. He was actually watching them on set. I'm actually hidden off to the side in a few of the shots, scrolling through the CCTV shots so that Mike can react to what's happening on the screen live. But yeah, I was basically there just hiding behind it, sort of scrolling and pressing play and pause as Mike was saying, because the computer is supposed to be voice activated, just to give it kind of a bit of a kind of quirky retro sci-fi feel, because we just wanted to make this world feel a little bit different to our own kind of modern day world. We wanted it to stand out on its own. So yeah, the computer sounds old, and it looks kind of like all this old tech, but it's also voice activated. You'll see in a moment when it does the facial recognition, that's all kind of like this old kind of Windows format from years back, like Windows 99 or whatever. Being able to get the CCTV on screen there meant editing the footage that we shot the previous night before this shoot the following day. So basically, once we'd filmed everything at the previous location that you saw in the first shot, I had to go home and edit all of it extremely quickly, get all the CCTV effects on there, make sure all the fast forwarding looked right, make sure all the right takes were used, make sure the special effects where the facial recognition stuff came up at the right moment, and then export all that out and get it ready to play on my laptop here on location the following morning, which was a challenge. I think I was up until about 4 a.m. Editing that, and then left at about 8 a.m. the following morning to come down to location and shoot this.
Fast forward.
So all these effects here I added in post, switching between different perspectives.
There.
Some of which is just the CCTV shot with all the effects added on top, and some of it is obviously what we shot in camera on the laptop on the day. This fight, there was actually a lot more to this fight that goes on. We choreographed an entire piece. It took quite a bit of the night up. I might show some of that now, just so you can see it. But yeah, there was a lot of choreography that went into this, designed by Richard Blackburn, and I just had to cut a lot of it, not because it looked bad, but because it just went on for too long. We maybe got a little bit carried away with how long the fight went on, and it just kind of ruined the pacing of the scene. So I had to cut around a lot of the fighting that Amy did, but the guys did a really great job. So I'll feature a bit of it in this breakdown, just so you can see some of what happened. And then yeah, at this moment, Amy unmasks our main villain there, played by Martin Smith, because she knows obviously there's CCTV in the room, and basically wants him to get spotted by Mike, because she knows that he'll watch it after the fact. Mike doing a great job again here, conveying despair. As I say, hasn't done this very much before. Probably again one of the first time he's cried on camera, so doing a really good job here. He sort of focuses himself. All these effects again, all added in post. And then this quick little facial recognition scan here, done by my friend Mikey. Thanks again, Mikey, for doing that so quickly so I could turn it around the next day. A couple of Easter eggs in some of those images there, some of the friends and family of the crew featuring. So now he's found his match, he knows how to go and get this guy. So this shot here, we arrive in the dojo. This again was shot at Mike's place. It's basically right next to the CCTV room, another little outhouse that he has. You can tell he's really into his ninja stuff in real life. He did martial arts for a living, so he had all the props and bits and pieces that we need to make this look cool. And obviously, the reason we did this film was because he's so into that sort of thing. We actually shot this in broad daylight. We basically put a load of bin bags on the windows. We wanted to have this kind of old school ninja vibe to the whole scene, so we added these kind of fake slats, like as if the window had these wooden slats across it, like blinds almost. But the windows themselves didn't have that. They didn't have blinds at all. So we just basically folded up bin bags into kind of rectangles and taped them across the windows. You can kind of see the shadow of it there on the left, and just had a big bright light shining through, and then added some haze again with the smoke machine, just so you could get those nice beams of light coming through. And because it silhouettes the bin bags, you can't tell that it's bin bags rather than these wooden sort of planks that is what it's supposed to look like, which you'll see in the shot in a moment. This shot again, I believe this was shot on the glide cam. The Sony FS5 was hanging upside down, again operated nice and smoothly by Adam Oping. And following Mike as he walks through. That trunk there is just such a cool prop. Mike just had that lying around. There you go, so you can see at the back there, yeah, it's supposed to look like sunlight, early morning sunlight coming through. He's obviously been watching the CCTV all through the night. Now it's early morning, he's going in. And yeah, if you look carefully, you might be able to see kind of the edges of the bin bags just sort of glinting. But without knowing what they are, most people will probably assume that they're just these wooden boards. Nice soundtrack here from Nigel Lowe. I kind of wanted to capture a bit of a kind of western-y, kind of Logan mixed with Last of Us vibe. Very minimal, just acoustic guitar. Did some nice sort of bassy booms as well, which you might pick up if you're listening through decent speakers. All these props in here are all Mike's. Mike either sourced them himself or already had them. A lot of inspiration from Mike was kind of Batman Begins with the costume, which you might recognise elements of the costume from some of the stuff they wear in the training section in the Batman Begins film from Christopher Nolan. And then, yeah, cut into Honor. Now we're in the bad guys HQ. This is Martin. This is very kind of quirky, troubled big boss. Never really learned much about him. Just wanted to make him seem very sinister. Hence the top-down lighting that we have here. We just had an LED kind of attached to a bit of scaffolding on the roof, and that just kind of creates those harsh shadows over the eyes and the face. No other light in the room. Just makes him look very kind of lonely and evil. Nice wide shot, very bland, very minimal. Didn't want to give too much away about him. The challenge in this room was actually trying to avoid seeing ourselves in the reflection of the window at the back, but we didn't want to put the blind down because it all just looked far too white. There wasn't enough contrast within the image, so we kept it up. So this is Mickey McGregor, another great actor. Again, from his shot over there, we were trying to avoid showing ourselves in the TVs at the back. A lot of the footsteps in this are all ADR as well. I think I might have added a lot of them in post as well with sound effects. It was hard to get good sound in the wides, and we didn't have much time to get sound takes, sound only takes. So had to fill out a lot of the silence with sound effects in post. So here he's counting the money that he's received basically from the clan. And that dragon symbol on the envelope comes up a few times. It's quite subtle. We didn't really want to outright say, you know, the clan has paid these guys to kill his family because he's dishonored their code. I never really wanted to say that outright within the film. I don't know if maybe it was perhaps, I don't want to say too subtle, but maybe it just wasn't clear enough throughout the film exactly what was going on. But basically that symbol on the envelope is meant to show that these guys have been paid off by the clan to perform this murder. Again, we're switching to the glide cam here. You see a bit more red light. Again, Krishna's trademark. Nicely composed shot here by Adam and Krishna. We were actually going to shoot this, if you see any of the previous footage of when we did the location wrecking, kind of tried to block things out just between me and Mike. You'll see we actually were planning to do this in a different room, which was upstairs. I can't remember the exact reason now, but I think we decided that down here looked better and could be blocked better once we got everyone on set and started rehearsing things. Fortunately, there were 2 pool tables, so we carried one downstairs and balanced it on this table. Nice different colours going on in this shot, just kind of aesthetically pleasing. And this is kind of where the film stops following Mike's character for a little while. I wanted to switch perspectives because one of the things that kind of drew me and Mike to the idea of doing a ninja film was kind of making the ninja seem quite intimidating, quite scary. Obviously, he's a silent assassin, he's a killer. There's a few films I think that Mike showed me as a reference. I'll see if I can find them and put them on screen. That basically show this ninja kind of going around just decimating these thugs, and it's kind of like a horror scene. And we kind of wanted to capture that a little bit. We kind of wanted to make this bit feel like a bit more of a horror kind of film, even though obviously it isn't a horror film. But just to follow these guys' perspectives for a while whilst they're kind of been hunted by Mike, just to give it a bit of a different angle rather than just following him, knowing everything that he's doing as he goes through and just cuts all these guys down. We thought it'd be more interesting to see it from their perspective. Because otherwise you're just following a guy going around and instantly wiping people out, rather than seeing it from the guys who are being wiped out, which I think sometimes is more interesting. These guys originally weren't really going to have much to say, they weren't really going to have any personality, but just not long before the shoot actually I decided if we are going to follow these guys around and they're going to get killed, we kind of need to have some connection to them so that we care about what's going on to some degree. Whether I achieve that or not is up to you. But I wanted to give them each sort of personalities. So the guy on the left, played by Kieran, he's kind of the new guy, a bit more nervous, unsure what's going on. You've got Mickey in the middle, who's just kind of more of the kind of, I guess, the alpha of the group. He's just a bit of a grumpy, aggressive type. And then the guy on the right, played by Richard, is more of the Joker, kind of the funny guy of the group, or thinks he is anyway. And these guys are all supposed to be the ones that were the ones in masks that killed the main guy's wife.
Dickhead.
How was he? Was he happy?
When have you ever known him to be happy?
So again, this dialogue here doesn't exactly serve the plot as a whole, but just kind of builds these guys up so that they're not just completely random people that die instantly.
What's going on?
Yeah, kind of leaning into these sort of horror side of things, noises in the background.
Normal. Seriously, just relax.
And most people should know at this point, obviously, it's Mike coming to kill them, so hopefully the excitement's kind of starting to build for the audience. The alarm goes off. We achieved that. Obviously, the alarm's just added in post. We just used an LED, turning the dimmer up and down with a red gel in front of it to simulate a kind of a red light flickering on and off, which we then had to continue for a few of the different sections of each scene. You'll see it in a few other scenes as well, and had to continue the alarm as well in different states. And sometimes you had to change how far away it sounded to make it seem like they were moving through the building, which was a challenge in post to kind of balance the audio and make it so it wasn't just this overbearing alarm throughout the entire thing.
Pussies.
So yeah, Richard being a fantastic guard there. We've got a Christmas tree on the side there, just to... For some reason all my action films seem to be set at Christmas. I guess I just like Die Hard. So this was just literally an office that we were able to use very kindly. Rachel, I believe her name was, the manager of this office, just allowed us to use it after hours overnight. She gave us the keys, very trusting. Really, really lovely person. That doesn't happen very often. We got very lucky. I don't think she even charged us to use it. So yeah, we got to use this massive office space, two-story office space, just free of charge. Which was fantastic. You can see, obviously we didn't want to change all of their stuff. We couldn't really move a load of things around, so you can see a lot of office stuff here. But the idea is that the bad guys here, they're kind of using this office as a bit of a front. I guess you could say it's like a money laundering thing. It's a bit like the laundromat in Breaking Bad. It's kind of they're all staying here and doing their dealings in the night, whilst in the day they'd be operating as kind of a normal office. And these guys are like the security guards of the place. So this door here with the button, we wanted to feature this as it obviously becomes relevant in a moment when Richard joins the action. This part here, really hard to achieve. We had to have a light coming all the way up because this was on the second floor now. The previous scene was on the first floor, so it was a bit easier to light. We had to get this light extended all the way up, and then someone had to stand out there the entire time and just hold it steady so that it didn't fall out. So that light that Kieran walks into, that orange glow, is coming from the second story window, meant to look like a street lamp. Nice shadows again by Christian there as he walks into it, and Mickey now goes off and walks into the gloom. This part was hard, I will admit. We knew how we wanted to do it, but it basically involves Mickey being stabbed through the back and then a knife being thrown into Kieran's hand. We had other plans of how we were going to do this initially, but then we had to change the location, the space changed a little bit, and then various things happened where we didn't have as much time as we thought we did on the day. So we had to find kind of quick cheaty ways to get around some of the effects. So Mickey disappearing into the dark. I spent a lot of time trying to get this scene right. I'm still not perfectly happy with it, but There's a lot of quick cuts, just because otherwise it is a long drawn out scene of just waiting around and Mickey coming back and being pushed to the floor. And again, if you linger on a shot for too long, it kind of looks a bit daft, because Kieran should pull his weapon and help his friend. Obviously, we're trying to imply that he's quite scared. He's very new, he's very green, he's very nervous. We see a shot of him with his hand trembling over his gun rather than pulling it out. But yeah, that's why there's a lot of quick cuts here. It's basically to try and hide my poor direction. Obviously, you can see Mike there hiding behind Mickey. If we left that on screen for too long, it would probably look a bit comical. Maybe it already looks a little bit comical with him hidden behind. But because it's quite dark and it's quite quick, I think we might just about get away with it. Whilst he's strangling him, there's the trembling gun. And that there where the sword comes through, we basically just had a wooden cutout of the sword. Mike had a real sword, and then Andrew Glazebrook made a wooden copy of just the handle that we could then attach to some kind of belt or some kind of pad that went beneath Mickey's shirt, sort of tied around him, and then we just stuck it through the shirt so it looked like the sword had been pushed through. So in that previous shot where it comes through, it's literally the sword's already attached to his chest, and Mickey just arches and it comes up into shot, making it look like it has that kind of forward motion of pushing through. And he spits out a bit of blood, and I added a bit of CG blood in there as well, just a quick spat to kind of add to the impact of that moment and try and sell the effect of it coming through his chest a little more. You can see practical blood now pouring out of Mickey's mouth from the internal bleeding. All just helps sell it. If you stay on any of this for too long, obviously you can start to see the flaws within it, but when it's all quickly cut together, not that that's the best way to edit, but in this moment it's very frenetic, it's very energetic, very chaotic, so you kind of get away with it, but I don't know how clear each step in the scene necessarily is, especially in this next moment. So here he finally pulls his gun, Mike throws the knife. He has the knife in his hand, but he doesn't actually throw it, he just keeps it in his hand, and then just before the end arc of the throw, we cut away to this shot, and then there's just a frame at the start of this shot where I painted out the knife from Kieran's hand and then removed the mask in the next frame so that the knife appears as he pulls it around and looks at it here. Andrew basically made a replica of the knife that Mike had, split it in half, and then used some sort of metal wiring to kind of make it wrap around, a bit like those fake things that you can get for Halloween that go around your head where you've got the knife poking through. It's just like that. But then covered it up again with some kind of paint and putty kind of stuff that makes it look like skin. You can see there, you can kind of see where the wire's gone around just between his fingers there. And Andrew's painted over it with the effects makeup that he has. So that again there, that was a bit of a longer scene that I cut. The cut there is a little bit harsh, but I just felt like it was better to just jump between him reacting to the guy being heard, looking a bit like, oh, okay, fine, I'll come and have a look. He also leaves his gun on the table, and I did make a point of him leaving his gun on the table. He picks up the bottle of beer instead of the gun. It's supposed to be this kind of little comical moment. But the gun just, it's not a real gun, obviously. It didn't even have a barrel at the end, like there wasn't a hole at the end of the gun, which I wanted to add in post, but couldn't make it look convincing, so I just cut the shot completely. So if you're questioning why he took his beer instead of his gun, it's because he's irresponsible and supposed to be funny. Nice little poster there. You are confined to the walls you make yourself, which I guess kind of is relevant. That kick there, nice little get results stamp on the wall by Mike. That was just on location, we didn't put that there either, but just thought it was quite funny. That kick, we did have a wire ready. We'd practiced some stuff with Mike and with a crash mat and a wire that was going to go underneath Kieran's outfit, and he was going to get tugged back. We were going to paint out the wire in post, but Kieran just did it himself. Basically, he was able to get the air from his own kind of momentum. So here where Mike kicks him, he just lightly makes contact with his chest, and Kieran does the rest of the work and throws himself back. And in this sort of corridor where he disappears into, we've got this little crash mat laid down for him that he lands on. So kudos to Kieran for managing to get that much air from basically nothing. It looks really convincing. I may have sped it up a touch in post by like 5%, but most of it's, I'm pretty sure the majority of it's all Kieran. Here Richard drops the bottle quite comically, and it hits the ground. We actually had a pillow on the ground to catch it. Obviously just put the smash sound effect in post so that we could do multiple takes. Mike spots him, he runs away and then blocks the door here. In this moment, he basically slices off his hand as he pulls his hand through the door. That again there is obviously just a fake hand. We didn't actually cut his hand off. Mike actually had the real sword in his hand then, so he just did a kind of very wide swipe that was obviously going to miss. And Kieran already had his hand kind of just hidden away like this. And Andrew put a little stump made out of cardboard and just painted red just on the ends, just so he could poke out there, just in case you quickly saw the end of his sleeve. We just wanted to hide the fact that he didn't have a hand anymore. We also had a close-up again of this hand here, but it looks too fake when it's close-up. But I think here, with the blood around it on the floor and the dark lighting and the quick cutting, it kind of sells the effect. Richard's wonderful screams. Again, these two rooms weren't connected. One was on the floor below, one was on the floor above, but we wanted it to seem like all this was happening on one floor, and we just continue the sound of the scream over from one scene to the other just to tie them together. Here Mike's basically standing over no one. He stabs down at nothing, and then obviously we cut to this shot here where we have again another prop version of the sword that doesn't have the blade, so Mike just basically stabs the handle down onto Richard's chest here, but there's no blade obviously there at all. Just presses it against his chest, and as the impact happens, Kieran just spits out some fake blood just to sell the hit a bit more. We had a shot under the table which we were going to do with the sword coming through, but again it just looked a bit naff, so I cut it. Pulls out the gun, and again we kind of trick things again there. Obviously the time that it takes for Martin to raise his gun and then for Mike to raise his blowpipe to shoot the dart, he probably could have shot in there, but we're just kind of quickly editing around these things. I think it was talcum powder that we filled the blowpipe with. It actually shot out the other end, and then some really nice quick whip pans from Adam there using the camera to sell the effect of something being shot at Martin. You can see the dart is in the side of his neck there. That was already in there at the beginning of the shot. We just used the pan to kind of sell the fact that it was being shot into him. And the dart there is, I think, an actual dart just held in place by some kind of like this weird skin-coloured putty that Andrew used. It didn't quite hold the weight of the dart in place on his neck very well, so you see it kind of sort of hanging off at certain points, but that's why I think he goes to hold it to try and keep it in place. Obviously holding it in character because he's like, ow, what was that? But in reality we did that because the dart wouldn't stay put. See there, his hands kind of went from being on his neck to being lowered. Bit of a continuity error. There was actually a point in the shot where he moved his hand down, but it just ruined the pacing of the scene to let that part play out because it takes so long for Mike to get from one side of the table to the other. So I just decided to cut it and go with the continuity error instead. I think sometimes you have to go for pacing rather than realism at certain times. So here, again, pointing out the clan symbol. Martin here, basically paralysed by the dart, is trying to tell him that the clan paid them. His line there is, the clan, they paid us. But he has to say it in such a way that it's not immediately obvious. He's saying it obviously, but he's paralysed, so he can't speak properly. The only issue there is I don't know if it's obvious to the audience what he says either. So if you don't hear him say, the clan paid us, you again might not necessarily immediately understand the connection, but that's why there's the symbol on the envelope, and then what happens later hopefully helps tie things together a little better. But Mike's obviously not having any of it. He's about to stab him through the head. Martin doing an excellent job here of just being terrified whilst paralysed. Mike looking extremely angry. We had the red light here. Obviously the lights changed from when we saw the boss in the previous scene because the alarm's been going off. And it was important to us that the alarm was visible in this room. We had that sort of red glowing light, again using the LED with the dimmer switch, just to really intensify the rage and the anger. This is obviously the climax here of Mike's rage as he stabs Martin through the head and gets his revenge, so to speak. Nice gory sound effects. This again, obviously done extremely close up, but we just had someone pouring the fake blood down the side of his face, and he was sort of letting it dribble out of his mouth. And obviously the sound helps sell it. And here, again, a nice whip pan by Adam. Obviously this was already on the back of his head, but the kind of movement of the camera and the sound effect of the knife being pushed through kind of tries to sell the idea that it's just been pushed through. Nice and gory. Gotta love a bit of gore. Always better when it's practical, if you ask me. So here he kind of realises the clan's responsible. We're hoping here that audience are starting to make connections. We now go to a completely different location. This was shot, it's in the same city. We shot all of this around Teesside and Middlesbrough. But yeah, this car park was a completely different area. Just a bit of context for this scene. We wanted to do it quite differently in terms of the fight that breaks out in the moment. We wanted to use long takes, but we didn't want it to be as long as they actually ended up being, because it's a very complex fight and there's a lot of difficulty in selling all of those hits and trying to avoid the cameraman's shadow appearing shot, trying to avoid lights, getting it all right. It's extremely difficult to do in a long take. But basically, we'd been told that we had, I think it was like 6 to 7 hours at this location for this evening, and we got there, and then the security guards that were at this car park, obviously we were there after hours after the car park, which should have been shut, basically said, no, you've got 3 hours. So we had to basically halve our schedule on the spot and just get everything done as quickly as possible, which is why this scene, whilst I think from the point of view of everyone else on set is really good, I think it's just in my head, it's not what it's supposed to be, just because we had to cut so many corners. We actually had to go back on the second night to get the final shot where the decapitation happens, just because we literally didn't have time this evening to get it done. I remember us literally having the security guards shouting at us as we piled up all the kit into about 4 different cars and just sped down this multi-story car park so we could get out before they locked us in, because they basically were threatening to lock us in. We had about 30 seconds to spare. The gate barrier went down as soon as we got out, so it was a bit intense. Really nice scene, sort of cinematic scene from up here though. That reveal there on the dolly shot, really nice. All that in the background is real. That's all the city. So this is obviously the reveal that the clan is coming to finish the job. The idea here now being that they're basically committing to a hand-to-hand fight, not going to use any weapons. All about honour. Here we see the symbol, he pulls it off his arm, trying to signify again that he's rejecting the clan. He has rejected the clan before, and this is why they're coming after him. Again, a nice little dolly shot there. This kind of fighting game-esque in the way that it's kind of framed with the 2 characters walking in parallel towards one another. And here we see kind of the hypocrisy a little bit of the clan. Obviously they were bowing there, and the bad ninja didn't bow. He just went straight in for the knee. We wanted to make it look like they had these kind of like smoke kind of effects, these sort of special, almost like powers. They kind of had always these magic tricks that they could use in the middle of fights to disorient their enemies. That was something Mike wanted to incorporate, so that's why he throws this kind of, it's actually talcum powder I think, but throws this sort of smoke in or sand into Mike's eyes and kind of disorients him. Had to do a few little digital zooms in this, just because you could see some of the cameraman's shadow on the floor. You still might be able to at certain points. We literally just had these 2 big lights lighting this from either side, just as big street lights. Again, most of this fight is all kind of just done in camera. I sped up a few parts by a couple of % here and there in post and cut a few frames here and there to add to some of the impacts, but most of it's just Mike and Scott doing a fantastic job. Obviously, as I say, we didn't have a lot of time. We'd rehearsed this fight in depth before at Mike's dojo, so the guys both knew exactly what they needed to do. It was just getting the new shots right, because we had to film longer takes so that we didn't have to do so many angles, just so we could get it all done faster. But yeah, all these long takes that you see of these guys beating each other up, we had to do multiple times before we got usable ones. So these guys really went at each other. You can see the paint starting to chip away on some of their costume. You can kind of see that obviously it was all spray painted black. It's all just kind of sparring gear actually that Mike had lying around that he used. If we'd had more time, we could have repainted it maybe, touched it up a bit on set, but we just didn't have time. I tried to lower the saturation of the orange, or that shade of orange, in post so that it wasn't so obvious. The original grade of this made the orange really stand out, and it was another reason that I really didn't like this scene, because it just looked a bit daft. So I tried to mute the oranges in this version. We only cut when we had to here. That smoke there that he throws, again, talcum powder, is real, but there was none really in this follow-up shot here. Again, we didn't really have time to check the continuity between the 2 takes, so I added in a little bit of CG smoke in post there, which Doesn't look amazing, but there's just enough there, I think, to sell the continuity between the two shots. Because it looked weird when there was none. Now he's disoriented, Mike pops out of nowhere. Obviously just using camera angles to hide him. Again, they're not fighting necessarily. There's moments where they're fighting kind of more as ninjas, and then other moments like this where they're a bit clumsy and kind of falling around. They look quite tired. We wanted to add a bit of realism to like a fight like this. We didn't want it to just be this pure martial arts. Everyone's a massive ninja. Everyone's just a superhuman, just a machine brawling with another machine. We wanted to make it seem like it was two people fighting each other, which is why there's a lot of grunting, a lot of mistakes, misses. There's moments where they get really tired, things where certain moves don't work out. Like here, Mike's obviously looking very beaten up. There's pauses, they're taking their breath. There's stumbling around. It all adds to the realism, which is why the kind of the handheld camera worked out quite well. We wanted to progress initially from tripod shots to Steadicam, glide cam shots to then handheld shots as the fight progressed from being quite ninja-y to quite brawly and just trying to basically beat the other guy to death. We wanted it to sort of devolve from this honourable fight to something a bit more chaotic and real. But again, the restrictions on the day meant that we didn't have time to set up the tripod shots or the Steadicam, glide cam shots as we wanted to, so it all just became handheld. Mike choreographed all of this himself with Scott. Just wanted to have different beats where the two characters were getting one over on each other at different moments, just to add a bit of a roller coaster. It's not interesting to watch a fight where one person's always clearly winning or one person's always clearly losing. We wanted this kind of roller coaster within the fight, and I told the composer this as well whilst editing, that I needed the score to kind of go up and down at certain moments so that we could feel like he was winning at some certain points and losing at other points, so that you get taken on a bit of a journey rather than it just being this clear-cut fight where one person beats the other one. Nice flip there. We did all the flips in different takes because we had to have crash mats set up. There were crash mats just out of frame so that we could flip Mike onto there, and then we just cut to a shot basically like this where he then just pretends to hit the ground from just, you know, half a foot up and rolls into this position. So here we have maybe the lowest moment in the fight for Mike's character. It's obviously very much on the ground here. He manages to make a comeback, but it doesn't work. He breaks free, and then you can see there Mike had some blood in his mouth that entire time, just waiting for that impact to then spit it out, and it makes this really nice streak across his face. That's why obviously clean it up. If we ever needed to retake it, we had to clean it up a few times, get it off the floor. Always time-consuming stuff that you don't necessarily think about when you're rushing. Mike looking very defeated. Scott, the other ninja, just pretty much ready to fight. We wanted more sort of another beat here where we kind of see Mike looking really fed up and defeated. But again, didn't have time to get the shot, so we just did it all in this one long take. But I think it looks quite cool seeing it all in one take in a way. You kind of go through the whole fight with him. And then again, this is the end of the fight here. We obviously cut for the leg break. I think we put on his shoe quite loose so that we could twist his foot around and make it look like his shoe was snapped. But you don't really see it from here anyway in the end. You can see in some of the previous stuff that we did, we were just going to have his hand going through his trouser leg on a close-up, so you thought it was his leg, had his shoe on top of it, and then would just turn his hand like that to make it look like his foot's been snapped back. But it was a bit comical, and we found it funny even in the previous, so it didn't make the cut.
It's quite hard to keep a straight face. Are you ready?
And now we see he's a bit more desperate to win. He's going for the sword. So again, the hypocrisy of the clan. They're not all that honourable, despite going after Mike because he broke their code. Mike now wanting to finish things, get his revenge. This really powerful shot from far below him. Obviously, he looks extremely angry here, looks very domineering. And then we wanted to have a moment where he's still the good guy. He's still this honourable person. All he did was want a family. The whole reason that they're coming after him is because he basically had a wife, settled down with a family. That's why they kill her, because he dishonoured their code by doing so, leaving the clan. And yet here he is still honouring the code and not killing this man in cold blood. Which again is then, we see more hypocrisy from the clan when he comes to kill the guy here, and obviously he decapitates him. This shot here, very fun to do. Again, this was shot on a different day. Scott wasn't even here on this day. We just had to get this shot without Scott. So what we ended up doing is that hand on the left there that has the knife that gets dropped, that's not there in the shot at all. That's added in post. We shot a plate on a different day because we realised we didn't have it. Just of Mike holding his hand up towards the black sky, obviously wearing the same costume, holding the knife, and he just sort of dropped it and it fell out of frame, and then I had to use a mask to key the hand into this shot and just sort of track it as it went out. It's not a perfect track by any means, but it just helps sell the continuity between this shot and the previous shot because he had his hand raised with a knife. So if you don't see it in the shot, it looks a little jarring. We actually had a bunch of people around the head here to make this work. So Andrew had made a torso, which we'd obviously fitted with the costume, and he then had a polystyrene head, which sat on top of the torso, which we covered with the mask. We had a pipe running up the middle of this torso that Andrew had hollowed out, filled with fake blood. We had one of the crew lying in front of the torso as well, with fake blood in his mouth, ready to spit up. And then we had another member of the crew with some fishing wire, which was attached to the polystyrene head, which was going to pull it off the torso, just out of frame. And then another person holding the torso itself so they could pull it backwards so it would fall out of shot. So as you'll see now, the head falls off there. That initial spurt of blood that comes up was the spit from the guy's mouth who was just in front of the torso. Obviously the head fell off because the wire pulled it off, and now someone else is pulling the torso back as someone else is pumping the blood through the torso, through the pipe that goes through the hole in the neck itself. So all that's practical there. None of that is effects apart from obviously the hand that got added in post. This bit here where he's just about to get shot, just added some CG blood onto the side of his head. Quite hard to make it look too convincing, so I actually sped up the impact as well, so that when he gets shot, he just gets decked basically by this sniper round. And there's a bunch of crash mats next to him as well, obviously, to soften his fall. And this, interestingly, was shot from an apartment that we got permission to film in. There was a little balcony on the side, and it actually overlooked the car park that we shot on. That there is the actual car park that we filmed on, and you can actually see the balcony, I think, in one of the shots whilst we're filming on the car park as well. So these are actually geographically accurate in real life. This balcony could have been used as a sniper position to shoot someone on this car park. Here we have another member of the clan using a less honourable weapon, if you ask me. Again, we've got some of Krishna's neon lights going on here. We wanted a neon light in the background to motivate the light here. I was going to get it added in post with a VFX artist, but again, it's one of the things that didn't work out. So instead I just had the sound of a neon sign buzzing in the background.
It's done.
Here she's using an earpiece.
But he dishonored the clan. This is his price.
And that line there is very key to the entire plot, really. Basically saying that Mike dishonoured the clan, and this is his price, linking back to that first title card that you see at the beginning, the reason the title card's there. And yeah, you're supposed to kind of feel a bit uneasy about the whole thing because the clan is so hypocritical in this. They've basically been as dishonourable as possible, hiring thugs and using weapons and using a sniper to kill this guy who dishonoured their clan just by, you know, going and having a family and having a relationship outside of the clan. So you're supposed to feel this kind of animosity towards them.
Understood. I'm done here.
So quite a bleak ending. We wanted it to seem quite pessimistic and to basically kind of set up a world that we would maybe like to explore again in the future, at least back then. Right now, don't really know how realistic that is, but that's kind of why it kind of ends on quite an abrupt note. We just sort of wanted to revisit this world maybe sometime in the future. All the guys here did a fantastic job. Really, really blessed to have worked with all of them. Lots of patience and lots of good people, with very talented people showing up to work on this and make it a reality. So there you have it, that's Honor. Thank you very much for watching this breakdown. I had a blast making the film at the time. As I say, there was various things that didn't go quite right on set at certain times. We worked on basically no budget. It was very much a passion project between myself, Mike, and a few of the other key players, Nick Parker, Andrew Glazebrook, Krishna, all of those guys really dedicated to getting this done. So I'm glad that I was finally able to release it. I'm still sorry that it took so long to get to the point of release, and it taught me a lot of lessons about production management and managing expectations. And I haven't produced a fully fledged short film of my own since this, actually. Just haven't had chance or time. But definitely hope to in the future. Again, funding is going to be a big part of anything that we do in the future. I really want to make sure it's properly funded and we have the resources we need so that setbacks that we experienced with this film don't necessarily occur with the next film. But I hope you found this breakdown fun, interesting, informative. I really want to keep making more of these, so I'll probably make a few more of some of the existing short films on the channel. Leave any suggestions you have in the comments below. I'm happy to look at other films. I'm happy to look at doing more editing tutorials. Whatever you want, leave us a suggestion and I will definitely put it on my list. So yeah, thank you again for watching and we'll see you again next time.
Just relax. Oh, who buttoned that?
Bastard!